Hey, so this week I want to do a bit shorter video and just talk about cleaning up a character using Flash. The process I use, some of the methods I use, and the way I use those tools in that program. Maybe a little novel or a little different from the way you might know how to use them. And hopefully you guys can learn something and get something from this video. Also talk briefly about problem solving to overcome some of the deficits that an individual might have working as an artist. Enjoy. Well, if you watched either of my other videos, you know I've been drawing lots of birds. So here I am practicing that new visual language and trying to apply it to some character designs while I'm away from reference to look at. So I sketched this rough image out and then went and practiced some inks over top of it, and finally decided to do a very much simpler version. So to clean this up in Flash, we're going to do a few things to set up the file to build this character. First of all, you want to open up a new file in Flash and make it the appropriate resolution for your needs. Then go File, Import to Stage, and find your reference image. Import it to the stage, it'll go to whatever the current layer is, and then you can set up your layers to work on. This is roughly my layer setup. Reference is that layer with the reference image. It's locked, so it won't be messed with. Colors is the layer that determines the color. Shade and lighten affect the values. And line is the line work. So, and they have different opacities to create the effect I'm looking for. So, now you just want to grab the pen tool. P is the hotkey for that one. You want to grab a bright color, a bright green or blue, or whatever is going to stand out from your reference image, and then go to town, go over those lines from your reference image, and always have a mind, not to trace them, but to evaluate whether they're helping you, whether they could be improved, and this is your chance to do another revision, a last revision. And you basically go through creating all the line work, not worrying too much about having everything neat, because as you see here, you're going to pick which lines you want to delete later to create that depth. The shape tool is your friend, and here you see me using the shape tool to draw a bunch of circles to represent sort of fluffy feathers. I'm then going to take a bright green pen line and go through it, separating each circle in half, and then picking which parts of that circle I want to delete. It's a little cleanup to finish the effect. Here you can see I'm going over again and just grabbing those little construction lines that aren't needed and deleting them. Going over the whole drawing, the whole character, finding those areas where you still have some construction lines and little details that aren't quite right, and just resolving them. It does make sense to have some elements as a group. As you can see, this little crystal ball type thing on his waistline is still a group, so it can be repositioned easily. It's a pretty quick way to build characters by grabbing those simple shapes and combining them and skewing them and just doing whatever you need to kind of quickly get something down that's accurate for what you're trying to convey. The next step is to convert the lines into fills by going to Modify, Shape, Convert Lines to Fills. It will create some areas of weirdness where things will disappear. Basically, there's some weirdness with some of the lines, the way they're interacting. So the way I solve this usually that I find is quick is by kind of stepping back and forward, undo, redo to see the areas where it's happening, and then go into that area and select parts of it. Take that area apart piece by piece, converting the lines into fills, and usually you'll track down the problem pretty quickly. So now we get into the cleanup. You can see here I'm going over that neck piece again. Now that it's been broken into a fill, it's a lot more fun to work with. Can get a lot nicer, more interesting line quality. And I think this tool, this is one of the things I really love about this, about Flash, is this feel of sort of sculpting the fills. So in this case, we're in the line layer, but at this this point they're broken into fills and they're behave completely differently than when they were lines. You can now manipulate the fills so that it adds to the weight of your character. You can have those lines thicker where gravity is pulling the hardest on them, so you can convey the stress of the pose, where the weight is, through the line quality, and create just more interesting dynamics in the character. You can see here as I go through the sort of pant leg, surfer short leg feathers, and it just becomes so much more dynamic after you've gone through and sharpen up some of those edges. And you can even here in the legs, you see me thickening up the section of the leg closest to us in those horizontal separations between the scales of the foot. By having the line thin out as it goes away from us, you create that illusion of depth a little bit. And down here on the foot where a lot of the weight is, those lines can be thicker. If you pull the fill over itself so that you get negative space, it will delete the part that is overlapped. So you can basically use that to cut shapes into the fills, into this line work. This method came out of creative problem solving. The problem for me was that at the time I was working in a studio using Flash for an animated series, and I wasn't really comfortable with the Wacom tablet yet. There's just some disconnect about it. I wasn't familiar with it yet. I hadn't used it enough. So I developed this method just to be able to keep up with the amount of work that I had to do. And at this point, even though I'm now comfortable with the Wacom tablet, I still use this method a lot because I find I get good results with it in a timely manner. It's just one of those things that came out of a necessity, out of creative problem solving, and I still use it to this day because it's actually quite a bit of fun. Okay, so you can see now that I've jumped ahead a little bit here. Basically, working all still on one layer with the line work, put down some fill colors. You'll see why in a minute. So because the fill is there filling up the line work that we've done, we can now go over that same layer with the pen tool and define the areas that will be shaded or have a highlight on them. Then simply grab that shape and copy it, paste it into the shading layer, which is above the color layer, and give it an opacity of 50% or 30%, depending on how you want your shadows to feel. By having the layers set up this way, you can always change the underlying color on the color layer, and the shading will stay the same. Now, I think some of these techniques could kind of be considered tricks or workarounds. I know that there's artists out there that can use a brush tool and have the same amount of control, amazingly, that I need these tools to achieve. But the reality is that's how I work. I find that when I just dive in to get my hands dirty and tackle a problem, and tackle the problems as they arise, from that effort, from that determination can come a workflow and a method, and you can follow that method and really rely on it. And you can rely on it because you know it works, because you developed it through solving the problems related to that task. Okay, so because of the way we set up the layers, you can see that I'm now playing with the colors, and because of the way we have the layers set up, the shading is not changing. All it's changing is the values of the color. One big decision to make is that will affect your character's look quite a bit, is whether you want the line work to be colored or not. So here I'm going about coloring in the line layer. The line layer at this point is all been broken into fills, so in order to edit it, we basically use the pen tool again and create division lines. You see the orange lines here, those are dividing sections of the line layer that will be different colors. Once the line layer has been colored, broken into its sections, you can leave it all in one layer and quickly just change the color of a given section of line simply by using the fill tool. On the other hand, if you want a more flexible setup, you can break them all into groups or symbols. You could separate them in layers and label them clearly. It depends on your purpose for this file. I like to keep it simple. If it's just something like this, I clean up. So you can see now, just playing with some of the colors, last little pass over the character to see which colors I think need to be adjusted and tweaked. And this is a method for getting the drop shadow, just basically grabbing all the artwork for the character, flattening it down, skewing it, making it transparent, dark color. And then you can see there I've put little circles, shapes underneath the feet. Delete the lines and use that same method to push and pull the fill into the shapes, the shadows I want. So there he is, my bird man, tweaking his beak a little bit, but essentially he's all done. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching them come together. So that was my process for cleaning up characters in Flash, and I hope that you got something out of it. I hope you learned something new, maybe you can use yourselves. And also I hope that if you enjoyed the video that you'll subscribe and follow me on Twitter, Nate T. Gall, or check me out on my website, which is FatNatFun.com. I'm starting up a pretty big project. I've been working on a animated short for a while now, for a long while, chipping away at it, and it's about done. So we're doing some audio passes on it right now, but we're getting close to the point where we're going to release it. So next week I'm going to be cleaning up a character design from that show idea and talking a bit about that project in more depth. So hope you guys will join me for that. Okay, bye.